Hi, we're Oxygen Conservation, and this is the Shoe Room Sessions. Lots of people are excited about seagrass and blue carbon now, but that was early in terms of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of projects now. I would say that the sort of the general awareness and profile of seagrass has grown a lot, and there's been articles on the BBC News. You see it at times, which is fantastic. And now I know of other organisations, in fact, even in the industry that we work in the drinks industry, who have also partnered with companies, not necessarily the Marine Conservation Society, but others doing similar kinds of projects. So it's good, yeah.
We should probably tell people who you are and what you do.
My name's Howard Davies. I'm a co-founder of Salcombe Distilling Co. So we're based down in Salcombe in Devon. Our distillery's right by the water there, literally waterside distillery. And we make Salcombe gin and also Salcombe rum, which I don't have on the table as it happens, and also a non-alcoholic spirit called New London Light. We started up me and my friend Angus had the idea in 2014, and we started selling our gin, first of all, in 2016.
Wow. So, and there's a lot of people out there who love gin, love the water, love Devon. They've got to think you've got the coolest job in the world right now. So how on earth did you get there? Take us back to childhood. Where did it start? How on earth did you end up doing what you're doing today?
Oh, wow, the life story. Okay.
Yeah.
So as a child, I've sailed all my life. Used to sail dinghies a lot as a child, and my poor father used to drive me around the country, taking me to little open meetings so I could race my little dinghy. And we used to go on holiday to Salcombe every year, like without fail, from the age of 5 years old.
And where did you grow up?
In Hampshire, originally. So I used to sail around Hampshire, down on the south coast there. And every year we went on holiday to Salcombe, and we used to hire the same house, which is overlooking the estuary there. It was fantastic. And we used to bring our boats over and have a couple of dinghies down on the beach, a beach called South Sands in Salcombe. And it was like, I used to look forward to it all year. These 2 weeks in Salcombe each summer, I'd be there, crab pool, rock pooling on the beach, finding the crabs, and it's beautiful. And as a child, it's like heaven. And there's a stream running down the beach there. You'd be damming up the stream, all that sort of thing. And then I'd take my little boat and go sailing around the estuary. And then actually my parents moved to Salcombe altogether.
Was that always the plan?
No, it wasn't actually. I think they just had the opportunity. They were able to work a bit more remotely than they had previously.
What did they do?
What do they do? So Mum worked for Toyota actually. She managed all of their IT at Toyota, if I recall correctly. And my father, by then, was kind of doing management consultancy, so he was able to work remotely a bit more. So they moved down to Salcombe, and then actually there was a sailing school in Salcombe called the Island Cruising Club. It was actually based on a disused ferry that was moored in the estuary, in Salcombe Estuary. It's this really cool place. And actually, as a child before, even when I was younger, I did some sailing courses there. And then when I was a teenager, I got my sailing instructor ticket, and I started teaching sailing in the holidays. It's quite a good thing to do, when you're at university, come and teach sailing during the summer. And so I teach there in the summer, and that's where I met Angus, who's now my business partner. And so we'd both be teaching sailing there during the summer. And the classic thing would be, you'd have a day teaching kids on the water, which was lots of fun. And it was quite a good social scene. And so then in the evenings, we'd normally then head into town, because we're based on this floating ferry. We head into town, and then we'd normally actually first drink of the evening, would go to the yacht club, which overlooks the water. It's got a lovely terrace in Salcombe. And I kid you not, the first drink of the evening used to be a gin and tonic. And that was probably the first time I'd ever started drinking gin. And it's just perfect, the sun setting over the estuary, you're with friends, it's just idyllic. So that was kind of my introduction to gin. I loved Salcombe since being very, very young as a child. Anyway, then went to university.
Whereabouts?
Oxford. So I studied engineering, and then went to work and then actually went into management consultancy after that. I was working in the city in London for a while.
Because you actively wanted to, or it was just the direction of travel that it sort of pushed you down?
You know what? It was because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't know if you may have heard that from other people. I honestly did not really know what I wanted to do as a career.
Most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had 100 plus guests. Most people were like, I didn't know. Because I think it's madness asking young people what they do want to do. I'm just about figuring it out now.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, I'm yeah, probably the same here in many ways, actually. So I didn't really know. And the attraction of consultancy was, I think I was a bit attracted by the bright lights of the city, but also the idea of being able to work in different businesses and different industries and gain some experience and see what I might want to do. So I did that for a few years, and that was quite fun because some of that was in London. I got posted out to America for a little while and other projects at other clients as well. So it was quite a good experience. And you really are going to get the full story now. And then after about...
They're the best ones.
Okay. Then after about... I'm going to give you the slightly abbreviated one. Then after about 4 or 5 years, I just wasn't really loving it. And also, I was looking at people more senior than me in the organisation. You've got a very clear career path there. You go from analyst to consultant to manager to senior manager to partner. And what was interesting was seeing the life and the people who were senior, who already made manager, senior manager, partner, and actually realising that I didn't want to be them. I didn't want to live that life. I wasn't that inspired by it. And so then it's like, okay, actually, I kind of know I'm just working mega hard. I don't really want to be these people. No disrespect to those people. There's some fantastic people, hugely talented, that I was working with, but it didn't really attract me that much. And then I don't even know quite how it happened. And then I just started to get hankering again for being in a nice coastal location teaching. So actually, I literally just quit my job. They thought I was mad. I quit my job, went to Sydney, Australia, trained as got like a more better qualification as a sailing and windsurf instructor, and went out to Sydney. And then I taught sailing and windsurfing in Sydney. I then spent 2 seasons teaching at an absolutely awesome sailing centre in a place called Vasiliki in Greece, where it's very windy. It's good fun. So I did 2 seasons there. Then also I worked in the Maldives briefly as well, actually running a small water sports centre in the Maldives. So I just had a complete career change. I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go and just live for a while. And that was...
that thing about you looking at the seniors in the business and asking, is that who I want to be and where I want to go to? I don't think businesses think about that enough, because I had the exact same thing in the public sector. So I looked up and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to live like that. Yeah. I found myself, it was a very different performance environment, right? So my understanding experience of management consultancy is fast-paced, challenging, you're in and out of different businesses, there's dynamic to it. The public sector is not like that. It's the complete contrary. There is no performance bar. Everyone's trying to do as little as possible, and it is like Yes Minister without the comedy. And I'd sit there looking around, and I was significantly younger than all the other directors, and I was like, oh my God, I'm de-skilling by the day. Yeah. I was managing hundreds of people, and my job was to say no to everything or to come up with an excuse why we couldn't do the right thing for the environment. Yeah. I was like, I do not want to do that at all. And I think I'm going to write a piece on this, but the sort of rallying cry for businesses is, are your senior people presenting a future in a world that the most talented people would want to do? Yeah. Because you look at an amazing sports team, so like a professional football team, the juniors are looking at those pros going, wow, I get to play in front of 100,000 people, I get to perform on the stage, I get this amazing lifestyle. Okay, that's aspirational. If you're presenting a senior management team structure and culture that you wouldn't want to be part of, that's a death nail for a business, right? You lose your talent, you go windsurfing instead.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so that was kind of what I did. So I did sort of 2.5 years, just teaching sailing and windsurfing. It was fantastic. Met some awesome people, and then I think but then I couldn't quite see where to take it. With hindsight, actually, I can see why I could have and possibly should have taken it. But at the time, I was like, I just can't quite see how I'm going to develop this into a sufficient career that's going to enable me to have a house, pay a mortgage.
So should you have started your own water sports centre?
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Exactly. So with hindsight, and I could sort of think of paths I may have been able to do it now. I probably should have looked at either start my own water sports centre or find a way of, and there's one possible angle, actually, I think I could have progressed of then, picking up the veins from somebody else's water sports centre. But I just couldn't quite see it strongly enough at the time. And
it's a hard model to scale as well, even if you do it at a very luxury high-end level. It's quite difficult because it's so predicated on you. It feels like one that's hard to scale in comparison to a drinks brand.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the drinks brand was was not even in my head at all at the time, to be honest. But also, I had Charlotte, my wife, and I, we were already together at this point, and again,
Where did she appear in the journey?
we met actually at uni.
Oh, really?
Right towards the end of university. So yeah, so she was very
Was she with you when you were doing this globe trotting?
no, not especially. So she was very understanding. So when I initially went to Australia, she wasn't with me. She came to visit for a little bit,
Yeah.
and then during my first season in Greece, she wasn't. But again, she came to visit for a little bit, and then actually when I was coming back to the same place, Vasiliki, to do my second season there. Big shout out, by the way, the water sports centre is called Wildwind. If you're looking for an amazing holiday, that place is fantastic. And then Charlotte quit her job and came to join me, and she worked with me, not for me. She came to work with me for the second season I did in Greece.
I love the little subtle drop of the very understanding wife. That spoke volumes. I too have a very understanding wife. Yeah, I think if you're gonna be an entrepreneur, if you're going to run a business, if you're going to try and do things that haven't been done before, you do need a very understanding partner.
Yeah, she has been brilliant. And so she came to join me, which was a weird one at the time, because I mean, it was fantastic, but I kind of felt guilty at the same time, because it's like, I've decided to sort of throw my career away, the career that I had at the time, to do something quite different. And then it's one thing doing that with your own career, but then having someone else do it as well. So yeah,
and were you conscious of that guilt at the time, or is that something retrospectively that you felt?
Okay, actually, is guilt too strong a word? I felt responsible. I think I say responsible more than a guilt, and I was conscious of it at the time, but at the same time, we were still youngish. We were in our mid to late 20s, and we're sort of confident enough that thought we can probably reboot the career in the future if and when the time comes. So she joined me then, so that was great. But then it got to a point where it's like, we're going to have to settle down sooner or later, and I couldn't quite think of a good way of making a path for it in the water sports industry at the time. So we came back to the UK, back down to Devon, because her family's from Devon originally. My family were now in Salcombe, so that was quite nice. So we moved over near Exeter, and then I got a job actually in technology, sort of project management. So it was sort of related to some of what I've been doing in.
And were you excited about that, or was it very much, I need a job and to get back into something and this will work?
I wouldn't say I was excited, but I wouldn't say I was morose about it either. It was just, it's quite interesting, new start. I love Devon, and again, prior to this, I've been working in London. So whilst my family, so actually, for me, the opportunity to be able to actually have a career or have a job being in a part of the UK that I loved, that was actually a new thing to me. So that was quite nice.
And we've got to remember, this is pre everyone can work from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like every job could be done from Devon. You were very limited to what was possible.
Yeah, that's right. This was like 2000. Yeah, this was like 2007, if I remember right, something like that. So yeah, way before COVID and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So we both got jobs sort of around the Exeter area, and moved into Exmouth actually, where we still are now, which I love.
Great place.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Kicked off our careers there. Charlotte ended up becoming a chartered accountant and working for a firm in Exeter, and I was working doing technology for a sort of a geographic information business. I did that for a number of years actually, and it was good atmosphere, nice place to work. I was enjoying the lifestyle. It was great. And I was there for probably about 6 years and sort of progressed my career quite well.
Is that the longest chapter of anything you'd done at that point?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And it's funny you should say that, because I did sort of have a feeling that there was a thing that I had kind of an eternal clock, and after every sort of 2 to 3 years, the buzzer would go off on the eternal clock, and I'd want to change, because the bit when I said earlier on, my slightly abbreviated story was that actually, even as my time as a management consultant, whilst I was there for 5 years, there was a point after 2.5 years where I took a sabbatical from the company, and Charlotte and I went travelling around the world for 6 months, and then I went back in.
I too have felt said clock. So I did 9 years in the public sector, but I had 16 jobs in 9 years. I was kind of an internal resource. I was describing this earlier. I'd get lent to whichever senior director needed some help with complicated stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd go for 6. I was essentially an internal management consultant in that setup.
Yeah.
So, and I think we get taught as kids that things last 2 to 3 years, because your GCSEs are 2 years, your A levels are 2 years, your undergrad's 3 years. Even if you do a PhD, it's 3 or 4. So I think we get taught that these are the chapters, the rhythms. So you end up in a career and it's like, oh, grad program's a couple of years, and then ultimately you end up moving through these sections. Like, we're 4 years into OC. This is the longest I've ever done anything. Not to freak the team out, but it's the longest I've ever done anything without getting bored.
Okay, well, I'm sort of in a similar kind of position myself. I think also though it's just, and I only realised this a few years back. I think that in all of us there's an inherent sort of desire to not just for change, but to learn, and if it ever sort of thing becomes a bit stagnant, or you're not constantly learning or something new, or your role hasn't changed substantially, then I think that forces you to sort of then be looking for that change so you can learn something new.
I think that sensor, that feel of needing that more learn is a divide for people. So some people just don't have it. And again, that's what you often find in the civil service, for example, and things like that. They're just like, no, I'm fine. Yeah. I'm very happy to roll it for 30 years. You don't find it in entrepreneurs, because people who have businesses, it's iterating every day, right? That's why you can constantly learn and move.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of point I was going to be making shortly. So yeah. Anyway, so then I was doing this tech stuff for about 6 years. The alarm bell. Actually, it was almost cyclical. Thinking back again, I thought there was a career path ahead of me, but it didn't quite inspire me. I started to get a hankering for, having worked in large organisations, throughout my life, putting aside the sailing and windsurfing bit, I'd started working in a large organisation. You're typically in a role in what I sort of would describe typically as a relatively narrow vertical field of expertise that you're responsible for, which again, you can become very, very good at that. But I thought, well, I don't just want to know about this and be good at this, and actually I'm interested in, and think maybe I could be kind of good at that as well, or maybe I could learn about this and do these other bits as well. And also, I don't know whether it started becoming fashionable at the time, or I just started developing a bit of an interest. There was a lot about, and the word entrepreneur I find pretentious and a bit irritating, but there's a lot about, it's sort of that became a thing, people with small startup companies being a bit cool and funky, so that sort of became a bit more, it certainly came into my sphere a bit more of awareness, and it started to appeal, the idea of being in any small business and then having the breadth of role and experience within that, and the dynamism as well that comes with that started becoming really attractive. And so I just, from one sort of then deciding, okay, I don't kind of want to be following this path up this way, and I really want to try doing something else in a small company in a dynamic environment. I wanted to do that. So again, I actually started looking at, I had a tiny bit of money in the bank, and I started thinking, well, I could either start something up or maybe acquire something. And so I started looking at even acquiring a small business and trying to develop it and change it.
And were you very broad at what that business might be at this point? You were agnostic to that?
It's funny. So yeah, some of the things I was looking at were sort of water sports or outdoor pursuits related. But at the time, honestly, I could have been happy making paper clips, if that's what it was. So it was relatively broad, but more than probably
you probably could have been happy for a couple of years.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe, yes. Yeah. At the time, I thought I could be happy.
Yeah. Because I think I could run a business that did X and improve it to a degree, but there's a difference between loving it and pouring your heart and soul and being proud of the product versus running something well.
Yeah, true. That's true. So yeah, but I think I kind of got to a point as when I was like, I just wanted to change, and Charlotte was working, so I had the capability to take a risk. There was one little company, actually it was a clothing company I was interested in at the time, and I was in some early talks with those, and I just got to a point I was like, I know I don't want to do this, what I'm doing now, and yet it's quite hard, because we all have sort of a level of pride in what we do. You want to do the job well that you're doing, and so I didn't want to neglect the job that I was doing at the time, but at the same time to not neglect the job that I was doing, but actually free up enough capacity to realistically make an opportunity elsewhere to follow something else, I didn't feel was viable. I simply was never going to give enough time. I was going to just stumble on forever. So I quit again. So I just quit. They thought I was mad. I don't know, they probably thought I was a little bit mad. And I didn't have a job to go to at the time. I had sort of one possible opportunity I was looking at. So I was then working, trying to find out what opportunities there might be out there. And actually, I did end up working for a short period of time for a really interesting marine technology company based down in Cornwall, actually. So that got me a little bit of experience working for a small business. but I still kind of had this idea of wanting a business of my own. And then,
just on your point on quitting,
yeah,
it's a really interesting one. So you often hear about it, like my love of business. No one in my family background had anything to do with business or manual workforces. It was very much you'll work for someone else, don't have ideas above your station. I had no idea how a business worked or anything like that. First person in my family to finish school, never mind uni, so I was blind to it. So my first encounters of how a business worked would be from reading books on Silicon Valley, and I sort of came out of uni as Google was forming and all those cool tech startups. And every one of those founders quit uni or their program to go be a founder. And people kind of like celebrate that, but they never talk about it's almost a badge of honor to quit and go do this thing. But I think you describing you needed to leave one set of circumstances behind to give full focus to the next. I think that's the key bit. It's not a rebellious, oh, well, I'm just quitting to go do this. It's like, well, if I can't do this well unless I stop doing this too. So you've got to absolutely be purposeful, present and all in if you want whatever you do to be a success.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, there was no animosity in my leaving or bad feeling. It was purely a functional requirement really to.
And I think the people who don't realise that, you then really can't assess how well your next project's done, because if you haven't gone all in, you don't know how good it could have been because you've divided your time across too many different domains, I think.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So, so then randomly, Angus and I were still in touch from back in the day. We kept in touch over the years. And if I remember correctly, Gus is what I call him. Gus, he's like, oh yeah, I've got a bit of an idea. And I think he'd kind of got to a similar point in his career where he'd been trying things, working with other companies.
What a day job been for him? What similar trajectory or?
Different. I mean, so he always worked in sales, and he'd been working actually in the marine sector. It's some quite interesting company, if I get it right, sort of things to do with, I'm sure I got it slightly wrong, sort of oceanographic mapping, something like that. So quite interesting actually, but still in other people's firms. And I think he'd been out in the US for a little while as well and seen the craft distillation movement sort of taking off in the US, and he had a strong interest in spirits as well. And so he'd started thinking, oh, it'd be quite nice to do something a bit different. And he'd come up with the idea. He thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity here for something like this for distilling spirits in the UK. And so he got interested. Do you want to come round for a barbecue? So I went round to his place for a barbecue, and he said, I've got this idea.
And was he in Devon back at this point as well?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so he'd already moved down to Kingsbridge, just outside Salcombe, and he'd said, I've got this idea. Obviously, we both know Salcombe really well. His childhood in Salcombe was really similar to mine. Whilst his family hadn't moved there, he'd been going there on a holiday every year since he was tiny as well, and he'd been teaching sailing with me there as well. So really similar. And Salcombe is one of those places, I think, that I'm a bit biased, but it's so beautiful, and it's one of those places, particularly being there as a child a lot. It sticks in your heart. It's just special. It really is a special place, and I think it was for him too. And also then, he'd had this interest in spirits as well. It's like, how about we create a distillery in Salcombe? How about we create gin or whiskey? Was the idea. And I said, well, you know what? I think that's a great idea. Actually. So
when it first landed with you, you were already like, yes, I like that. Your gut reaction was?
Absolutely, particularly for the gin. We haven't done a whiskey, as you may have noticed. Maybe that'll be in the future. But particularly for the gin, I could just see it, because knowing Salcombe as I did, and kind of what Salcombe stands for, the sort of the environment and the Salcombe brand itself, it was and the lifestyle there, such an obvious fit with gin. In fact, when we started the business, sort of jumping ahead, people were saying, oh, Salcombe Gin, you guys have been around for years. And we're like, no, we've actually only started just now,
Oh,
but
that's
it was such sort of a natural thing that people thought it would be around for a lot longer.
I love that. Hearing you describe the build up to this is wonderful, because circuitous paths of each of you going off on your different journeys, but you can see the elements that are lining up to come together.
Yeah. And there were sort of parallels in some ways to Gus's and mine, sort of.
When you were collecting experiences and skill sets along the way to make it possible.
Yes, which is actually kind of a key sort of useful thing. It's a partnership as well. So Angus's experience was very much in sales, and he's brilliant sales guy, and he's the kind of guy, he'll walk in a room and within 10 minutes he's friends with everybody. He's fantastic, really, really lovely. Anyway, so I was like, oh well, that sounds like a great idea. So I'm back at this barbecue. Okay, let's do it. it literally was, we kind of decided there and then at this barbecue, let's do it.
So what year is this?
This was 2014.
Okay.
By now, yeah, 2014. And so it's like, okay, what do we need to do? So we started putting together a business plan, and then there was three main things that we needed to do to really launch it. One was learn how to make gin and develop our first gin. And I'll talk a bit more about that. And the other was find a location for the distillery. It was really important to us that the distillery would genuinely be in Salcombe, not just somewhere else. There's got to be some integrity, in what we're doing here. And then thirdly, we needed to raise some investment to start the company as well. So then we set upon trying to achieve those three things.
What was the order of difficulty in doing the three things?
Probably investment and developing the gin were the two harder ones. The distillery, it was finding a location for the distillery in some ways was more a stroke of luck than particular hard work or skill. I mean, we were scratching around trying to find a commercial premises in Salcombe, and there's not that many. I mean, Salcombe's relatively small. And then we heard on the grapevine that that this building, so the Island Cruising Club where we used to teach sailing years ago, as well as being on this disused ferry, they had a land base as well. They had this sort of old beaten up old boat shed on a street called Island Street in Salcombe where they used to do boat maintenance. And we heard on the grapevine that that premises had been sold and that site was going to be developed. And we're like, okay, well, that feels like fate. That would be an amazing location for a distillery. And so we did a bit more research, and actually the developer, who also was a sailor as it transpires, had already had an architect do some plans for it, and they'd already submitted these plans to the council, to the planning council. And of course, as you probably know, you can log onto the council planning website and download plans. So we downloaded these architects' plans for what he was planning on doing, and they're really nice drawings of the building that he planned. And basically, we then from the internet took a nice big picture of a big copper still that you distill gin on, took a photo of that, photoshopped that into this drawing, into like the big window on the front of these architects' plans for the building, put a little, 3 or 4 slide deck presentation of what we wanted to do with it, contacted the developer, went round his house, pitched him and said, here you go, this is what we want to do with your building. What do you think? At this point, we didn't have money. We hadn't had the funding at this point. And thankfully, he was super supportive, loved it. And there's a lot of interest and demand for that building that he was creating there. But he was so supportive of us. He said, look, okay, guys, love it. It's yours. You just got to raise the investment that you need. But I'll kind of, have you, at the front of the queue for that one. And so that was like, wow.
Love the audacity of you guys doing that. Like, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
Yeah, it was awesome. And actually, and then the double whammy with that. So one is that was a big tick in the box of, okay, we've kind of got an amazing location for the distillery. And two, then in terms of the investment proposition, when we're trying to raise investment, that's a big step in.
It's real.
It's real, So now when we're putting together our sort of investment deck for people, we've got, right, here's the location, here's a drawing of what it might look like, here's the copper still photoshopped into the window there. So then it becomes a lot more.
And it's social proof as well, because you've got the support of a developer who's putting in like a premium premises together in an amazing location, rooted to place. So I often think when you're building a startup, it's how many of those elements of authenticity, integrity, and social proof you can collect, because they're like dominoes, right? You knock them over and it builds as you go.
Yeah.
So what were some of these raising conversations like?
So we'd never done anything like that before. So that's you're putting yourself out there. So we put together an investment. We had our business plan, so we created an investment sort of pitch deck.
And was there anyone outside the two of you helping with this, or it's just you guys and friends and family?
Just friends and family for advice. We had a consultant in the industry who helped us with some of our training around developing gin, distilling gin, first of all, and I can talk a bit more about that. But in terms of actually, I suppose what we did do with this, we engaged with a third party company that helps raise investment. This is probably just about in the early stages of crowdfunding, but this was kind of before crowdfunding had really become a thing. But nonetheless, there were companies out there that would help you with your pitch and help introduce you to potential investors for commission, basically. So we did engage with a company.
I always think that's a difficult balance, because yes, you want to learn from other people's advice and experiences, but you don't want to be pushed off what's authentically you, because you can quite easily be selling someone else's vision or structure, and then that loses the authenticity. And I think when people are backing startups, they want it to be very pure and authentic.
Yeah.
So I think that's such a difficult balance.
Yeah, it's true. So so pretty much they potentially have links, but then it would always be myself and Gus who were kind of the front face of what we're doing. But actually, the majority of our investment actually came more through our own networking than the introductions from those guys, although they had some good advice.
And there's principally individuals in the first instance.
That's right, yeah. And so we did things like we'd so that now that boat ship is now a building site, yeah, where we were going to put the distillery. So it had the normal big fencing on the front. So we put a big the developer said we put a big sign up on the front of the fence saying, at that time we called ourselves Salcombe Gin Company, as it happens, not Salcombe Distilling Company, but we put a big sign, Salcombe Gin Company, planning launch. I can't remember, it must have said something like looking for investment or something like that. I can't remember. Email us here. We set up an email account of things. I think we set up a Facebook page at that point. I don't know, maybe we had, and we'd done some promotion on that. And then we just started to network through people that we knew who knew Salcombe, and they'd sometimes have someone else that they'd know. And then we'd did a couple of investment pitches through webinars. Nowadays it's so simple with with the likes of Teams or Zoom or whatever, and those things were exam ran. They're still a little bit in their earlier days then. So we were doing things like pitches through the net. We'd go up to London sometimes to meet investors and pitch in person, which is a new experience. But I don't know, we weren't cocky or arrogant, and so it was sort of nerve-wracking. But we weren't. But we believed in what we were doing. We believed in it. We believed we could do it and make it happen. And I'm, I say, Angus is a salesman. I can't sell something unless I completely understand it and believe it and 100%. I can't bullshit. I have to really know it. So, but I did. So it was kind of okay. So we went up and we pitched and we spent a load of time doing that. And then eventually we managed to secure, once you get a couple of investors through, then it helped the momentum. And so in the end, we ended up with about, if I remember, I think it was 23 investors initially, all individuals. One was kind of a corporate, but mainly individuals, and typically people who knew Salcombe to some extent,
some kind of emotional connection.
Exactly, that's it, yeah. And buying it, and so we kind of managed to secure enough of our seed funding through that.
Amazing. Yeah. And so when did the first product arrive?
Okay, so then we were busy developing the gin in the background, which was literally, so we bought a miniature still. So, and we still got them because we have them in our gin school. We have a miniature still which is like this size, and it's really fantastic. You can basically create one bottle of gin. So we were busy iterating gin recipes on this, creating our own recipes, doing blind tastings, me and Angus, 3, 4, 5 different bottles a day, doing a blind tasting, decided what we liked and what we didn't like. We had to do it blind because we're competitive, and I'd particularly think, this botanical is going to make it amazing, and Angus would have some other one, this botanical is going to make this recipe amazing. So we had to kind of be blind, so we weren't biased towards our own thing. And we were quite objective. And so we'd be doing this development, and then every now and then we'd maybe get a short list of, these are maybe our 5 best gins that we think we've made so far. So then we start getting friends and family or people we didn't even know from businesses in the area to come and do, we'd hold a blind tasting session. We'd hire a room upstairs at the local pub at the Crab Shell in Kingsbridge and have a load of people come around and do a load of blind tasting and take feedback and then keep iterating. So I'll get to answer your question shortly. And we did this for about 18 months. So this was going on in parallel with the other things I was talking about.
People often think there's chapters to businesses, but when it starts, it's just this, right? It's everything all at the same time. Right. You're just living it all day, every day.
That's right, exactly. Well, that was it. And we kept iterating, and we were getting some good feedback. And then actually, it was the chap that we'd been working with to give us initial advice on how to set up the distillery. Came to see us one day, did a tasting of what was our sort of best gin we developed so far in our minds at that point. And he was just like, guys, what are you waiting for? This is great. You should be going to production now. You've iterated enough. You should go for it now. And that was 2016, so early 2016. And the pieces have kind of come together because at this point then we'd secured our investment. We'd kind of got the location of the distillery locked down, and now the liquid was there. And so we went into production.
When you scale from your small still to your big one, does it just scale directly? Does it change anything in terms of the flavour profile and things when you just up the scale, even though the proportions remain the same? Does anything else change?
Yeah, quite a few things. So firstly, we didn't go at that point in time. So at the moment nowadays we distill on a 450 litre still, and that's what you'll see at our distillery, beautiful large copper thing. When we started the business, we didn't have the capital for that yet. So we started on two 60 litre stills, which they'd sit on this. One of those would sit on this table quite nicely. It's this sort of size.
Yeah.
We had two of those. But even scaling from the 2.5 litre still to the 60 litre still, it's a mixture of art and science. Okay, so you can't just say, okay, right, 60 divided by 2.5 is what, 24. You can't just 24, is that right? Yeah, that sounds right. You can't just sort of multiply all of your botanicals by exactly 24 to get there. I could talk for ages about this. I could try not to get.
Mate, it's good. No,
okay.
People love this stuff. That's what makes it interesting. It gives it's like the difference between a print and an oil painting. It's the texture of the brushstrokes that make it interesting. So don't hold back. And Penny will make it great in post.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. That's what she's here for.
So, so when you're distilling a bottle of, there's a number of facets here. When you're distilling a bottle of gin on a 2.5 litre still, it will take maybe 45 minutes. It's really quick. It's only a small amount of liquid. As your stills get larger, the duration of your distillation gets longer. Okay, and on a 60 litre still, I'm going to forget this exactly now because it's been a while since I've used it, but you're looking probably like 5-6 hours, something like that, quite a lot longer. And on our 450 litre still, it's like 8-9 hours. And the fact that your distillation period is longer then has a bearing on your botanical proportions, amongst other things. So for instance, if you picture, some of the botanicals that will go in our gin will be things like, there's citrus peels from fruit, okay? And some powders as well, like we use some cinnamon goes in there, which is in a powder form. Orris root is in a powder form. Now those will actually dissolve into the spirit really quickly in a still. The oils come out of the citrus fruit so quick. The powders dissolve really, really quick. Now, if you compare that to some of the other botanicals that you use, such as juniper, even obviously the main ingredient in gin, juniper's got a relatively thick skin, it's a berry. It takes a while for the flavour to permeate out of that juniper berry into the liquid. Similarly, we've got things like a cubeb berry, which is like a peppercorn. It's quite hard, It takes a while for that flavour to soak out of that into the liquid. And so actually, if you can imagine then that when you have a longer distillation duration, there's more time for those flavours to soak through from some of those types of botanicals. Therefore, you will therefore need a lesser proportion of those, should we say, slower botanicals, flavoured botanicals, in a 6 litre still than you would in a 2.5 litre still. Because in a 2.5 litre still, you're only in there for 45 minutes. So you've got to put a bit more proportionally of those in to get enough flavour through into the liquid, etc. And you can imagine you're sort of, and so in terms of the botanical proportions, then, you sort of start from like, okay, like base position would be a multiple of 24 for each of these. But then actually, okay, for these ones that got a hard skin, okay, probably then maybe it's not going to be 24, maybe it's going to be a ratio of 12 or 16, and then for the ones that go really quick, like some of the citrus fruits or cinnamon or something, then maybe it's not 24, maybe it's going to be 30, yeah. But it's not an exact science, so
because you've got a curve of time for each ingredient, plus quantity. Love it. That's so cool.
And I haven't even got onto cut points yet. And then there's things as well like on a distillation run, you have 3 cuts that you take. Okay, so you start your distillation run off. You have your still. You put all of your botanicals in the still with a mixture of neutral grain spirit, fundamentally alcohol. Ours uses an English wheat grain spirit, and some water, and you put all that in. So you seal it up.
Is the water tested ahead of time? Because I assume there's quite a bit of variety in terms of the mineral content and whatever the water's like.
Yeah, I could talk for so long about it. So we're very fortunate. Like, okay, we're sitting in Exmoor now. Exmoor's lovely. The water in Salcombe comes from Dartmoor, as it happens. Dartmoor's a really lovely soft water, and actually, the type of water that you have has partly a bearing on the distillation. Actually, where you have even more of a significant factor is ultimately when you come to bottle, you'll blend again with water when you come to bottling, because your gin will come off the still at, depending on your still, 85% ABV, whereas typically you're bottling normally around sort of 40%. I mean, our start point is 44%. So you're blending with water later. And so the nature of the flavour of that water, the mineral content, has a really significant bearing on your gin. And sounds like a bit of a sales pitch, but a lot of the feedback we get on Start Point is that it's a really smooth gin, and I think that's partly to do with the soft water that we get from Dartmoor. So water is important. So yeah, you'll test things like that. It's worth noting that the water will get purified and it will go through a reverse osmosis process as well.
That gives you improved consistency as well, presumably.
Absolutely, consistency is really, really important. So water's key, and then you've got the cut points that I was talking about. So when you start a distillation run, you heat up your still. It starts boiling away at roughly 70 degrees C. I could talk for a while about that as well. And then your spirit starts coming off the still. Okay, now the very first bit of spirit that comes off is called heads. Okay, and that's going to be the strongest bit as well. Now, if there was any impurity in your base spirit, now we use high quality spirit, so it shouldn't happen, but nonetheless, that's going to come through. Like, let's say, heaven forbid, there was some methanol that somehow got, you might have a tiny proportion of methanol that somehow got in your base spirit. Well, methanol has a lower boiling point than ethanol. So the methanol is going to come off first. And also, some other flavors that may be unpalatable might come off right early on. So the first cut you make is something called heads. And so you'll wait for a certain amount of time, you measure it, and then you'll take these heads and you'll take that away. You'll collect that separately. And that typically then won't be used in the gin that people will ultimately drink. The heads that we collect at Salcombe, we use it for cleaning. You can use it to screen wash in your car. During COVID, we used it to make hand sanitizer. Yeah, so great. But depending on the size of still and the process, it will have a variation on how much heads you collect. After you collect your heads, you do a cut, then you start collecting hearts.
Does anyone produce a drinkable product out of heads anywhere in the world?
No. It's
because of the risk of impurity on it.
Yeah, exactly, because of the risk of impurities, flavour and impurities. But you could use it for maybe you could use it for nail varnish removal or something. I don't know, non-consumable things. So the first cut's heads, then you're into hearts is the next bit. Now hearts is the good stuff. So here's where you're collecting the gin spirit that you're going to ultimately bottle. And that's the majority of your run. And what's fascinating with hearts as well is, again, the flavour of your distillate through the collecting the hearts process actually changes as your still run goes on over time. So a bit like I was saying earlier on, I've kind of given the game away over here, because it's often the question I'll ask when I'm doing demos and things: why would the flavour change during the hearts run? Why would it evolve? And it's because, again, at the beginning of the hearts run, it's typically more sweeter and more citrusy. And that's because, again, those citrus notes will come through really quick. That some of those spices and stuff will come through quick. And the licorice, if you've got that, will come through quite quick. And then as it goes on, then some of these other botanical flavours that take longer to permeate through will come through. So as you progress over time, your hearts becomes a little more earthy, a little deeper in flavour. And actually a huge amount of the skill then is sort of monitoring that, because actually ultimately your gin is going to taste like the average of all that a lot. So you're letting that run over time, and then there'll come a point in time in hearts when the flavours have kind of dropped off so much, it's become a bit too earthy, a bit too thin, not quite so nice. And then you do another cut, and then you start collecting something separately, which you call tails, and that's the tail of the run. And again, the flavours kind of moved on so much then that it's not quite suitable for going in the bottle. As it happens, and some people will just throw tails away. We don't actually. What we found is there's still some reasonable flavour in there, and there's still some alcohol in there. So actually, when we're starting a still run, when we're putting in all of our fresh botanicals and fresh neutral grain spirit into the still festival, we actually take the hearts from the previous day and put it back in the still and re-distill the hearts. And actually, it gives sort of like a little bit more of a base backbone to the flavour.
Like a sourdough starter in bread almost.
Yeah, okay, yeah, something like that, yeah. That's the thing.
Where does brand start appearing in this story, in the visual presentation? Like, when did you know? These are beautiful, mate, right? Like, I adore this. I think the first thing I ever saw about your company was the visible appearance of the bottle before we even met.
Yep.
How does this come from your little still on the table to something so beautiful and elegant? Talk to us about the journey with brand.
Sure. So from day one, the liquid's got to be amazing. Yeah, the liquid's got to be world class that you make, without a doubt. But if you could have a world class liquid in a poor, unappealing package, it's not going to work. So we knew that actually having beautiful branding from day one was going to be really, really important. we both wanted to position it. We had a, again, it fits kind of with Salcombe having sort of an aspirational lifestyle, sort of a luxury positioning for the product. And actually, there's an old friend of Angus's from his school, who was then had worked in the drinks industry for a while and was then working in a design agency. And he actually joined us as a non-executive director very early on. His name's Nick. He's a really good guy, like massively skilled.
Consciously because of that background, or just the guy?
Because of both, really. So because of the background, because he had experience in the industry. He had like 17 years of experience in the industry, and an understanding of branding and design as well. And he was just a very smart, super switched on, good guy to work with. So Nick joined us early on. And so Nick was working for, at this point, he was a director at a design agency in London. So then we, you know, it's hard not to be too biased by these things, but we knew they were good. Nick's a really good guy. So we started working with those guys. And so then we had ideas what we wanted about the brand. We wanted it to be clean, elegant, luxury, association with the fact that...
What does luxury mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to avoid using that word actually a lot. What do I mean by it? I mean, to me, I mean, very high quality, something that is to be enjoyed, something really fine and special to be enjoyed. I think that's what it is.
So I love that word because it means exactly what you described to me, with the aspirational bit there as well. And I think it's a really sustainable word because it's not disposable, it's not disrespected, it's a purposeful choice. So we think about it from like we have some wonderful holiday cottages here in the farmhouse that people can rent. We want a price point that is aspirational, because then that attracts a customer and a clientele who respect where they're coming to, will be a good customer, respect the environment, appreciate what's there. It's not disposable. It's not something to be mistreated. It's a purposeful choice. So I love it. I love luxury as a word. And I think the sector needs to use it more. The environment sector needs to position the environment as more precious and luxurious, not disposable, because that's part of the reason we've got in the problem we have.
Well, I think so I totally agree with you. I think part of the challenge is that luxury can have quite negative connotations as well. You know, a lot of luxury can be to do with, a very disposable or materialistic lifestyle, if you're not careful.
Overconsumption.
Exactly. So, you know, and actually, an interesting challenge for us is how do you bring about an ethical consciousness or sustainability alongside having a luxury product? You know, that's a really interesting thing. Anyway, so back to your question. So we had these ideas about we wanted to be elegant, luxurious, represent some of our links with the sea and the ocean. And so we had these sort of base building blocks. There's a lot of history as well to Salcombe in terms of its maritime history as well. So we had all these, like, if anything, too many building blocks and ideas. And so we worked with this. So we went to the agency. So this is what we want to do. This is what we want to create. And then they you start a process of ideation and design with them. And then that evolved into our flagship provisional gin, Star Point. So all credit to those guys. They were very much able to sort of take, I think, what was in Angus and my hearts and minds, and then translate that into something beautiful and clean and simple and elegant.
So the first bottle of this that a customer will have bought would have been what year?
2016.
And has the visual presentation of this bottle changed much since 2016?
A little bit, actually. So the word Salcombe and gin are, I think, slightly bolder than they were there. You wouldn't even notice that that's a subtle difference for me. But there used to be, on the original bottle, we had actually a little flag on it, a pennant flag on a thin mast running through the O of Salcombe, and it was quite nice. And the idea was it was meant to be helping create an association with a pennant flag that you have on a yacht, and gin pennants, which we could talk about, which is quite fun. But actually, after about a year or two, we didn't think that was necessarily being understood that much. It wasn't that apparent. Actually, we just thought, let's go even cleaner and simpler. So we took that off, and actually just got simpler still.
They always so I love the concept of brand and read a lot around it. And they always say, as a business matures, the successful ones get simpler and simpler with their
Interesting.
branding.
Okay.
In terms of the glass on something like this, is what's the process about finding the right bottle? Because you've got the beautiful sort of, I don't know the terminology, whether it's not embossed, but born of the sea on the bottle at the bottom. I mean, it's the detail with this and the simplicity that I think is so beautiful. How does the choices around glass and stoppers and things come about? How does that process work?
So basically, there's you can either have stock bottle shapes and so existing bottle designs that bottle manufacturers do, or you can get a completely bespoke design, or you can do something in the middle. So initially, when you're starting up, you're never going to have the money for a bespoke bottle design. You have to pay a lot of money for that. So then,
Presumably, that's doable at an economy of scale once you're ordering enough.
exactly, that's it. And so initially, we literally just got loads of samples of different shapes, and it was like, what do we like? Do we like this? Do we like that? And we're just sort of playing around with these. And in fact, if you go to our gin school, I think you still say that. If you go to our gin school now, on one of the shelves in the gin school, we've got bottled still loads of the initial iterations that Angus and I did when we were developing gin. We've got like recipe number 1, recipe number 2, recipe number 3, all numbered like
wonderful.
this. And we didn't have loads of bottles at the time. So actually we were putting those in some of the sample bottles that we were getting from some of the bottle manufacturers. So some of those early iterations are like in random shaped bottles.
Love it.
It's quite funny. So, but then ultimately, we both just really liked, there was something we really liked about this bottle shape. And so we initially started actually with a plain version of this bottle shape. And then after a couple of years, we had thought, should we go completely bespoke? But actually we thought, we really like this bottle shape. Let's just make it a little bit bespoke to make it more about us. So that was when we added things like the Born of the Sea on and our logo and this embossing here as well. So yeah.
Love it. We touched earlier when we started about partnerships and things, and it's a really interesting one for us at the moment. So we've got some sort of naturally formed partnerships. So we work very closely with the law firm Burgess Salmon, who have helped us on all of our acquisitions. They're Bristol based, Southwest. That's a big part of our ethos. We work really closely with Low Carbon, a renewable energy developer that helps us explore wind farms in Scotland. Triodos Bank, who are very generous and helping publish my first book in June. And of course, Knight Frank, who sponsor the podcast. How do you decide whether a partnership is the right fit, the right ethos, whether it's something that helps you both, or actually whether it's not right for the brand? How do you think about those decisions? Because I look at the RNLI one here, which makes so much sense as a logical fit. How do you think about those opportunities?
There's got to be some level of synergy. There's got to be some relevance, and there's got to be, we'll have, so on the sort of charitable side, like the RNLI, I mean, I've sort of spoken enough about, everything we've done from my childhood has been around sailing in the water. So the RNLI is such an obvious fit. I mean, what a fantastic charity.
And don't they just, that pops, doesn't it, in terms of just the logo has such an emotive reaction. I just see it, and it's like something to be proud of.
Yeah. So, and then there's a shared sort of association with the sea. We're quite proud to be English or British as a brand, and the RNLI is very British organisation, so that's great. So, and then with other people that we work with, we work with the Royal Ocean Racing Club. Again, that speaks to sailing and racing, which is a lot of my background, which is fantastic.
Are there any that you've been approached by and you said that's not really for us?
Yeah, we do get that a bit actually. I wouldn't want to name it, but sometimes it's it can just be that sometimes that maybe there's just not actually. There's actually not really anything relevant, about what you do and what we do, and so it's just not going to work. That can happen.
For me, it's where they don't feel coherent. Yeah. It feels like some really cool brands do those things where you collide concepts that wouldn't work together, like fashion brands and artists or sports companies. But I think certainly we're still a young business. This is only our fourth year, or third going into fourth year. It's got to make sense and help amplify a brand, and like there's a clear coherency to place, to the sea, to sport, to luxury, to what you're doing there. So I totally get that, and it's a similar lens I apply. If it doesn't make sense, probably doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right. And then sometimes when it's the RNLI is great from a charitable perspective, as is the Marine Conservation Society. Then there's others where you look at it with through more of a commercial lens. It's like, okay, then so is their reach as an organisation going to be complementary to our own and likely to be of a similar sort of target group of people who'd also be interested in Salcombe Gin, and vice versa for those? And the best partnerships are the ones whereby, okay, so the people who know us and love Salcombe Gin or Salcombe Rum, Probably this other partner company, they'd be interested in that as well. It's got relevance and vice versa. So the best partnerships are where you both benefit, and so that's what you're really looking for.
That's what we had quite a few approaches about sponsoring the podcast for some really random businesses and things that just didn't make sense. What we loved about Knight Frank was that they're trying to do something different in the sort of land and property space, but they have a completely different, they're a much bigger company than us. They've got a longevity, they've got a massive international reach. They can't be as agile, as playful, as challenging as we can, but they want us to be. Whereas we want the reach they have geographically, internationally and things. So it was the perfect alignment of difference, but with a similar ethos. But we spent a lot of time with their team. So I'm very close with James Farrell, their lead, and we had the whole team up to our estate in Scotland for a few days on the hill up there. And it wasn't until we knew there was that actual cultural alignment with teams that we agreed to do it, because it's an important thing, I think, when you put your brand alongside somebody else's.
It is. You know what though? It's actually one of the aspects that I enjoy most in the company. I love the partnerships. I love the opportunity to meet other people, but then work alongside and get to know other people from other businesses.
You can learn
It's
so
one of
much,
my favorite
right?
things. Yeah, you can learn loads, and it can just create like great opportunities and experiences as well.
And some more excitement and momentum. I think that's really important for the teams as well. So the lady I was mentioning before we started recording, Eleanor Doms out in Belgium, their team are doing some amazing things about innovative building materials. So using hemp and mushrooms to grow property. And they keep coming up with something playful, like they grew mushroom-based chairs, but as a playful partnership thing to keep momentum going and to have a new story and to share things, rather than it being a product yet. I mean, it will be in a generation to come, but everywhere you can inject a playful bit of excitement, as long as it adds and improves the brand, not detract from it.
Absolutely,
Sustainability is a key part of what you do as well, and has run through your career. Talk to us about that, how that figures into your operations and your thinking in the business.
Yeah, loads of areas. I mean, firstly, I think worth sort of stepping back. Culture. You know, I think I can be proud and honest to say that anybody in the business now knows that when they're trying to look at supply chain or what they're doing, that's in the back of their mind with what we're doing. So that's really key. And then it comes across all kinds of. We've got the charitable partnerships I've spoken about already, where we're donating to the Marine Conservation Society, and the RNLI isn't really sustainability, but it's a pretty good organisation. And then you've got things you do operationally. So actually, let's talk about like I mean, there's packaging, which I could talk a little bit about, and then also there's things like trying to improve sustainability from a disposal and use perspective. So, you know, one of the things that we've really grown a lot over the last couple of years that I'm quite proud of is we have a refill scheme for our gins now, and we do it a bit with the rum as well now, whereby on the sort of direct to consumer level, people can, if they keep their empty bottles when they've used it, they come into one of our stores, and we've now been able to roll it out with some of our trade retailer partners as well. They can have the bottle refilled in store. And
logistically, that must have been a nightmare when you first started thinking about that.
It's still tricky, and actually trying to I want to scale this and grow it further. And actually, there's a bunch of challenges around it. But so far we've done it. We're doing it ourselves from our shops in Salcombe and Dartmouth, and some other retailers in Devon as well. And so people come back, they bring the empty bottle, we refill it for them, or one of our trade partners refills it. The customer gets a 20% discount on the price, which is, you know, meaningful and motivational for them. It's great for the environment, you know, because people talk about recycling. Recycling is not the be all and the end all. You know, and with glass, recycling is a fossil fuel intensive process.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy, doesn't it?
Reuse, if you can do it, that's amazing. And you know, it's not just the glass; you've got the labels, and for us, it saves us buying a new glass, new labels, the labour involved with bottling and labelling, and so it's just like everybody wins.
How important is the glass and the weight of the product to the brand feel?
Okay, so I'd say the aesthetics are important. The weight of the glass, there is something, I think, historical whereby people will associate something heavy with something of value. Yeah. And now that's tricky now, because actually heavy stuff costs money, it has an environmental impact when you move it around. And so we will, at some point we almost did it we have on our plans to do another bottle project in the future. But I want to thin these out further than they are, because they are.
Are you familiar with a gentleman called Rory Sutherland?
No.
He wrote a book called Alchemy.
Okay.
And he's the managing director. Oh, sorry, no, he's the vice president of a company called Penny. Can you look him up? Ogilvy, that's it. Marketing firm.
Oh yeah.
Really big, flamboyant guy, massive head, amazing guy. And he talks about the psychology of marketing. He's like world-renowned guy. And he says they've literally scientifically proven that the weight of the bottle of this is in a wine context, people think it's more valuable and it's better as a result of the way. They've done it with cutlery and said the heavier you have a cutlery in a restaurant, the more expensive they think the food is. So I had a friend who received a bottle of gin in a paper and plastic bottle, and it felt like Ribena. It was such a weird feeling.
I know there was.
So there's such a balance, because I think it would detract from the quality of the product at the moment and people's perception of it, definitely. So yeah, and I'll send you a copy of that book. It's great.
Well, I still think there's capability to make, and I still like to thin out the bottle a little bit in the future. I think there's an opportunity for that. But people do associate weight with, I mean, even take it from, go back to your basics. Gold. Yeah. Gold is heavy. Yeah, and so there is that association, but
and
I think
that'll take generations to change. We can't do that in 10 minutes because it's it's Darwinian, isn't it?
It is. But what's interesting is, people's are becoming more conscious all the time, and what's noticeable now, go back 5 years, you'd struggle to sell a product in simple brown cardboard packaging. People are, that's but it's actually now more you can, because you can still make something look quite nice, and now I think people are, at times when you're looking at packaging, some people at least will be thinking, okay, well actually this is just a bit too glossy or heavy or amazing. What maybe there's an environmental issue where something's brown or simple, then actually that can create an attraction that's growing. We're not there yet.
I think you have to run seal it. You have to purposely fully step into that. If your model is, we're IKEA, we're pared back, basic, no luxury, you get this, then I think that has to be your brand. I think it'd be very difficult. If you suddenly rolled that out, I think you'd lose a ton of customers being like, but hold on, this is luxurious and Salcombe, and this is sat on the terrace at the yacht club as the sun sets. So I think it is such a difficult balance. I think you've got companies who are sort of balancing, like the Patagonias of this world, who just iconic in terms of the way they do branding, that it's like, well, this is what we're doing. They make authentic story, but they try and pull away from any excess, like you're describing with like thinning out the bottles and things.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing you can do on packaging, so still there's ways you can have a packaging that still feels luxurious, but at the same time still has some good sustainable credentials. And actually one of the big things as well is about supply chain is really, really important. In terms of where's these things created. And so one of the things we focused on a lot is, in fact, we're doing a packaging project at the moment for the gift box that our gin comes in, and actually we're now working with a company based in Scotland, actually in the UK, to get it manufactured locally. And so progressively over the last 5 years, we've been trying to, a lot of what we produce comes from the UK anyway, which is great, but still some aspects of packaging have come from overseas. And we've been trying to progressively bring it closer and closer back to the shore here. And that's an ongoing thing. And we've made big progress in that way. And the big packaging project we've got at the moment is doing that.
Those gift boxes are fascinating. So at one of our Scottish estates, we've got a whiskey room there that has a whole array of locally found whiskies. And they all arrive in these beautiful boxes. What do you do with them afterwards? We literally have a stack of these boxes, and myself and one of our co-founders, Mark, were looking at these boxes going, can we send them back? And so we spoke to some of the company, no, I'm sorry, we don't want them back. Don't know what to do with that as a solution moving forward. It's really interesting.
Okay, so that is an interesting segment. So one of the things we're looking at the moment, so we've got the refill scheme, which is fantastic. We do it on for there's another version for sort of bars and restaurants as well, which I could talk separately about. But then another thing that we're looking at, which some companies are doing now, is where you could have refill pouches. Where actually you buy like a nice little pouch with a spout on it, and then people will have that, and then they refill the bottle from a pouch. Now the benefit is then you're not shipping heavy glass around, and you don't have the manufacturing costs associated with glass. And so it is at face value quite
a number of pouches versus bottles in a lorry would be hugely different.
Yeah, exactly. It's a significant weight saving. So there's that is like a clear key benefit of it. At the same time, some of the talk around some of the pouches. Oh, it's great, and they're recyclable. I find, oh, great, the pouches are recyclable. That's got to be good. And I was talking to a manufacturer literally last week about this, and they said, yeah, they are recyclable, but you can't recycle them in your normal domestic recycling. You can't do that. The only place you can recycle them is by taking it to the supermarkets and putting them in. Some of the supermarkets collect those big sort of plastic things at the supermarket. You put it in there. Well, that's great in theory, yeah. But actually, how many people, we're human, our customers are humans, yeah, for the most part, as far as I know. Ultimately, a lot of people just aren't going to have the motivation to actually do that, I'm afraid, out there.
Especially with more and more people having online shopping, busier lives, trying to balance everything. People are trying to avoid that trip to the supermarket, never mind make a...
Exactly. So a little bit, so it might be, okay, theoretically these things are recyclable, but actually in practice, how many of them really will be? So you've kind of got to take some of those things into account. Another good example is, I don't want to name any brand names, but there was a type of plastic that was often used for like plastic cups and things like that in the past, and be like, okay, well it's recyclable. So it's okay, oh, great, it's plastic, but it's kind of recyclable, it's fine. Well, yeah, it's recyclable if you take it like an industrial
weight and pressure and heat and
no one's going to do that. No one has access to it. So there's so many nuances between this one. When I come back to sort of being meaningful, right, when we're talking much earlier about, you've got to be so careful that the initiatives that you follow are truly meaningful, and genuinely, you've got to ask our question: is it generally going to add value in the right way or not?
Love it. One area we haven't touched on is the complications and challenges of balancing building a business and also the other responsibilities we all have. So one of my favorite questions is, so I have to wear 3 hats: founder and CEO of a business, husband and father. Mm-hmm. Of those 3 hats, which are you best at?
God, that's a deep question. Founder, husband, and father.
So my order is, I'm best at business, then husband, then father, I think, in terms of the time I give. And the check is, I asked my wife and she's like, yeah, that's accurate. But she's amazing at the mum part, and she would say, not so good at the wife part. So together it makes the perfect whole.
God, okay, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I can be quite self-critical of I make mistakes all the time managing a business as well. But I'd say certainly in terms of the time and mental energy I give, it's the business. My wife and I do have a good home life, though. The kids are happy. I do sometimes have that feeling. I literally had it the other day. I was just like, God, am I spending enough time with my kids? I got given for Christmas, I think, the sort of Haynes manual of being a dad. You might have seen that one. You know the one? It's so funny. It's like the Haynes manual. It's all these like great activities you can do with your kids. It's a lovely book.
How old are yours now?
They are 8 and 10.
Okay, mine are 8 and 6, so very similar trajectory. Yeah. My experience, it's easier and better as they get older.
Yeah, okay.
More to engage about. I'm not very good at. I don't think we'd be very good in business if we were very good at just doing nothing. Yeah. Because they're diametrically opposed skill sets. So now parenting is more engaging and more doing things and teaching and experiencing things. I feel like that's better and better. Whereas in the really early days, I was just a support system for Helen, being the amazing mum, like make sure she's fed and watered and looked after and things. So I am enjoying it more and more now. But that tension is something every business owner or leader, male or female I've spoken to, they're always asking themselves those questions. And I think my thing is the realization that it's not possible to do all 3 things exactly the same at the same time. You just can't do it.
Yeah, and you're always going to feel you're falling short. It's like you can't kind of juggle those 3 balls all satisfactorily all the time. There's always something, I should be doing a bit more for this one, or a bit more for this one, or a bit more for this one.
So our head of people's an amazing guy called Andrew. He's got a PhD in performance psychology. So he's so useful to have around. He has an analogy. It says, life's about glass balls and plastic ones. You can drop the plastic ones, don't drop the glass balls. And he said, as long as you're there for the graduations, as many birthdays as you can hit, the really important things.
Nice.
Being able to do that. I'm totally taking up too much of your day than I said I would. But my favorite question to end on is, what's the one question I haven't asked you wish I had?
Okay, that's going to require some thought.
Maybe
I suppose there's the aspirations for the future. Yeah, that's the obvious sort of closer as well, isn't it? So, actually, the other one as well was maybe some of the founding values of the business as well, because it's when we start right from day one in the company, there were three things we set out as sort of the backbone core values of the business. One was passion for what we do, and we wanted everybody who works for us to be passionate and love what we do as a business and our products. Two was quality and attention to detail. We are pedantic, we're meticulous, about anything we do in terms of the creation of liquid. It's got to be, there's no compromise, it's perfect. And then that's got to come through in terms of the branding and packaging we spoke about earlier, and hopefully I'm doing a reasonable job today, in any way that any member of the team exhibits, interacts outside of the business, or that we're seen through our marketing or our social media. It's got to be really on point and really, be perfect and clean, representing what we stand for as a brand. And then thirdly, integrity. And that comes back to even the fact that the distillery had to be in Salcombe, that we're truthful in what we do, that we have integrity and understanding in how we try to go about our business in an ethical manner as well. That's really key. So that's got to tie through all the way through into the future as well. So it's my desire and intention that we might scale to a certain point where we exceed the capacity of Salcombe, but as much as possible, our gin should remain, staying in that distillery should stay in Salcombe, with our gin being made in Salcombe. But at the same time, I want to grow this business to be, I want, when people internationally in the world think of what's a luxury spirits brand, with ethics, I want it to be Salcombe that comes to people's mind. That's what I want it to be. I want it to be, the world's #1 luxury gin, but where people have an appreciation for there's more to it than just, a glossy product. Actually, there's meaning and purpose behind what we do as well.
Howard, thank you for coming in. I love the brand, love how you describe the business. Those values came through in every word you said, and when your team and family listen to this episode, they're going to be so proud of you. And I'm proud to share a geography with you in the Southwest, and you're one of those amazing companies that could only exist where it does, because it is really special down here in terms of the connection to the environment and the sea. And thank you for coming in. It's been a pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure to chat. Thanks very much. Cheers. Thank you.